Thank you for joining us on the program today. My name is Aaron McCullough. I'm the associational missionary for the Troop Baptist Association. And I'm so glad to have on set with me today Dr. Gretchen Peacock, who is a wonderful person, just an all-around person, but she's also a wonderful counselor. And one of her specialties is grief. And that's what these videos, this set of videos that we're posting is about. It's about grief. So if this is you, then you watch these videos. She's going to give you some information that will help you. Or if you know somebody that's going through a grief issue, tell them, give them the website, tell them where to come so that they can see this. Now what we're doing is an acrostic on restore. And the very first session, if you have not watched that, go back and watch the first video. You will hear her personal testimony. And the first part we did on the restore acrostic, which was recognizing the symptoms. Today's program is going to be about expressing grief and maybe even learning how to sing in the middle of your depression. And somebody said, "Oh Lord, I hope he gets depressed so he can learn how to sing." But that wouldn't one have nothing to do with the other in that aspect. But anyway, Gretchen, I am glad, or Dr. Peacock, excuse me, I'm glad that you're with us today. And we're looking at expressing grief. Now we're talking about recognizing symptoms. So now we're moving forward to expressing grief. So I'm just going to turn it to you and let you speak to us.
Thank you. And the restore comes from a passage in Isaiah that he will restore health to us and heal us of our wounds. Expressing grief, I think that is something that people have a very hard time doing. I see a lot of repression, suppression, and just total avoidance. Because I'm fine, we want to be strong. Tears are often seen as a sign of weakness. However, I disagree with that totally, because the greatest man who ever lived wept. Mm-hmm. Jesus wept, shortest verse in the Bible, because of loss. And so he's acquainted, again, another passage, he's acquainted with our grief. Mm-hmm. So expression, there's several ways that we express. You typically think about the tears. I'm touched by the passage in the Bible about how he treasures our tears and puts them in a little bottle. In fact, here in LaGrange, the Centers for Antiquity, I was actually able to see one that they unearthed from Israel, and they actually have them in their bookstore. And so I have one of those in my office. And a little tear cup. So we think, okay, what do we do? How do we do that? I have to say that the experience with my mother-in-law, I had 3 sons, I still have 3 sons, but at the time there was 9, 6, and 3 years old. And that phone call was shocking to me. My husband was in Atlanta working. I didn't know how to get in touch with him. Just shocked me, and I understood what the Bible spoke about wailing. I wailed. It just came from
deep within.
It was just a nightmare, and the wailing had an impact on my children, because they heard it. And I don't think we need to hide our emotion from our children, because we want them to learn that it's okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay to hurt. But when it came time for my mother, like I said, it was a long, slow fade with her. My boys referenced that and said, "Are you going to cry like you did with Mimi?" I didn't cry like I did with Mimi. I wasn't in the shock phase. I had a progression of grief throughout. I grieved years before, so when it happened, I was not surprised. Mm-hmm. So everyone grieves differently. Everyone expresses grief differently. Sometimes there's the anger expression, and I know that we think that anger is wrong, but again, the scripture says, "Be angry, mm-hmm. but in your anger do not sin." Mm-hmm. And my wonderful counselor I was privileged to work with. Actually, he was my mentor. I worked with him at a California Christian Counseling Center for a long time. He went on to become the director of counseling, Focus on the Family, hence my connection with Focus on the Family. But he did a teaching how that be angry is an orgeo. The Greek word for that is orgeo, and it means natural fruit. And then but do not let the sun go down on your wrath is the snort of the wild stallion. So I'm thinking, and that's paragismo. And my thought is, it's okay to have that natural grief and, oh, I'm so mad. But when it gets into a destructive, think about that snort of the wild stallion. It's just ready to go.
It's good.
We don't want to be violent. The violence is going to cause more pain. So now, if something happens and you broke a glass or something like that, but we need to learn how to corral that horse. So that's one of my things about.
Well, you're talking about that. Let me interject this right quickly. It may have even been you that I heard say this, but somewhere along the way, somebody made the statement that says, it really helped me. Grief does not have to make sense. I mean, grief,
doesn't.
You can't put it in a cookie cutter.
No.
So,
there's no one size fits all.
Yeah.
And
it's okay for it not to make sense. But you express out of what you're sensing. So that struck me.
And the loss of our mother, my mother-in-law, the interesting way that my husband grieved, I didn't see a whole lot of tears, I saw some, but he had been working on this major backyard project. And I remember the night before we heard what happened, because she was coming the next day to see us. She's in Arkansas. He looked up and he stayed up all night working on this terracing thing he'd been doing. And he said, my mom is going to be so proud of me. Well, she never got to see it. And the thing that happened with that is it took him 5 years to get back to that backyard to work on it. So there was an expression of grief. It is not please remember, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a natural fruit of the dark night of the soul. Psalm 51:6 says that he delights in truth in the inmost being. And I think when we are repressing and pushing down, we are not being truthful. We're not giving the Lord the delight of knowing. He knows it, but to have us in relationship with him as we express it. And not only with God, but with people. It's the passage, confess your faults, not that grief is a fault, but confess your pain one to another and pray for one another that you're healed.
Makes you feel better to talk about it.
It does. And if you don't do that, then we have that repression, and that repression is going to come out in sickness, high blood pressure, more anger, and I think I look at our emotions like a pressure cooker, and we need to be able to
You've hit on a very thing that my mother used to say. My mama was a sage. She had her sayings, and she said, tears are God's little jiggly thing, is what she's called it. Because she didn't know that little thing on top of a pressure cooker was a pressure relief valve. To her, all it was a little jiggly thing. And but it was letting the pressure off to keep it from exploding. And she says, without tears, we would explode. And I said, well, it's great.
And they've done studies that have shown that there's a chemical in tears that help us feel better, help release a chemical that helps us in the healing process. I am one that when I am in the presence of the Lord or really touched in a special way, I cry. And also when I'm sad, I cry. And this is an interesting thing about tears. I want to study more about tears. I have noticed that when I am in deep grief and deep sorrow and those type of tears, I'm allergic to my tears. I get red and splotchy and my eyes are red for a long time. When it's out of worship, out of joy, I don't have allergy.
Wow.
So hence, bitter tears.
Wow. I
So,
never paid any attention to
how
that.
about that? So, but tears are for our healing.
Well, what about other expressions? I know we're talking about tears, and we talked about anger. Are there other expressions of grief that we need to put into this section?
Well, I think expressing just the hopelessness, like an Eeyore spirit, like the life has gone out from under me. For me, there's no reason for me to get out of bed.
Woe is me.
The world is just, and to be able to get up and go. I had someone yesterday tell me about her husband of 85 years. Well, they were 85, and the husband of 60-something years. That she is now going to the YMCA and getting all the other elderly people to go to the Y, and just like she's moving. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So watch that hopelessness when that comes on you, that malaise, that heaviness. I've had it described like being in a vat of molasses.
Yeah.
You just can't move.
Yeah.
So that watch the expression of sedentary and the isolation.
Okay. Well, this has been very helpful today, and I hope you all have gotten a blessing out of this. And let me say that the purpose of what we're doing is not to be able to fix you, any problem you may have, and whatever, in one 15 to 20 minute segment. That's not it. No. We want to give you some help, some takeaways from what you're hearing today. But the main thing is to make you aware of it, to maybe you look at or hear something Gretchen has said and say, well, I wondered why I was going through that, or well, I'm not crazy after all.
Normalize it.
Normalize it, yeah. But you can also, you have a resource in her that you can call her. She will help you any way she can. I know her well enough to know that she will do it. Now, she is a very busy lady, but she will help you if you'll reach out to her. So as we begin to kind of wrap this segment up, I want you to look into the camera again and tell them how they can contact you if they want to.
I will. I work with a New Start Counseling Center in Fayetteville, Georgia. The phone number is 770-461-9944. 770-461-9944. I do have a Noonan office, but the calls are taken through my main office in Fayetteville with that number I just gave you. And we love to help people.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure that you've enjoyed Dr. Peacock today. I want to encourage you. We're doing a whole series on grief, on the acrostic Restore. So this is the second video. So if you haven't watched the first one, go watch it. And of course, you watch this one if you're seeing me. But there will be others we'll be putting up to the website. So be sure to check back and to watch these videos, and if you need to send it on to somebody else who's going through this difficulty with grief, please do that too. All right, God bless you, and I hope you have a great rest of the day wherever you are today, whether it be morning, noon, or night. God loves you. Have a great rest of your day.